Welcome to Yarn and Garden. Today I'd like to show you how to make this sunflower square. It's not exactly a granny square. We're going to work it a little bit differently, but the way that we work it is what gives it this nice texture. It's got kind of a 3D look. The yarn that I'm using for this project is Baby Bee Sweet Delight, and I'm using 4 colors. This color, Baby Sage, is going to be the border of the square. It's a very soft, lightweight yarn. The brown color is called Chocolate, and the yellow is called Sun Kisses, and the one that we're going to start with is called Green Light. This yarn recommends a size 8 hook, but I am using a 5. The way that we build this sunflower square is going to be a little different. We're going to start with this leaf color, and this is called the crocodile stitch. If you're not familiar with the crocodile stitch, you might want to make a small swatch just to familiarize yourself with how it works. I think it's a really fun, unique stitch, and it can be a little complicated to understand at first. But there's lots of great videos on how to do the crocodile stitch. So let's get started. Our first row is going to be that light green color. And we're just going to start with a slip knot, and then we will chain 48. I'm just going to double check my count and make sure I have 48. Now we're just going to slip stitch into the first chain to form a circle, and make sure that you don't twist your chain up when you do this. I prefer to work into the bottom loop on the chain. If you work into that top loop, sometimes it stretches out, and I don't like how that looks, so I just usually work into the bottom loop on my foundation chain. We're going to chain 2 to get started, and then we're going to work a double crochet right into that same stitch that we just slip stitched into. And then you can pull that tail and it'll tighten that stitch up. This first row is just a foundation row, so we're going to keep on doing 2 double crochets in every 3rd stitch. So in this 3rd chain from where I was just working, I'm going to put 2 more double crochets, and I'm going to be working into the bottom loop again. We are going to end up with 16 of these double crochet pairs in this row, and if you are familiar with the crocodile stitch, then you know that's because we are going to build a scale, or in this case a leaf, on every other double crochet pair, and then in the following row you will stagger the scales, or in our case the petals. And we want to end up with 8 leaves and 8 petals, so in each row we are going to create a total of 16 double crochet pair brackets. So I'll show you one more time working into that 3rd chain and working into the bottom loop. We're going to work 2 double crochets into that same stitch. When you get all the way around back to that first double crochet bracket, you're just going to slip stitch it together into that top of that chain 2 that you started with. And that's going to be the first round, and this is just the foundation row for your first real row that's going to have the leaves. So if you've never done the crocodile stitch before, this is the part that might get a little confusing. We're going to start off with the chain 1, then we're going to turn our work sideways, and we're going to work into those little brackets that we created in the first row. So here is that very last double crochet that we just made, and we're going to use that as a foundation and make 5 double crochets on that stitch. And we are just working under the double crochet that is the left half of this little bracket. See, there's those 2 double crochets together. We are only working under the left one right now. So here is 5 double crochets all worked into that same space. Now we're going to chain 1 and we're going to turn our work around. For me, it helps to fold my work on that double crochet that we're about to work into. Now we can double crochet 5 times on the other half of this little bracket. So now we've finished our first scale, or in our case, a leaf. So it's a pretty simple repeat, just chain 1, double crochet 5. So we will chain 1 and turn our work. And now we're going to skip one of these little brackets. So here's our leaf, and here is the very next bracket, and we're going to work into the next one after that. So here is the bracket that we're going to work into. So we'll give it a little fold right here, and we'll work under this double crochet, 5 double crochet stitches. Like I said, this stitch can be kind of confusing at first, but once you get the hang of it, it is a super fun, unique stitch. So there is our 5 double crochets and our chain 1. So we'll turn and work up the other side of that little bracket. There's our 5 double crochets, so we will chain 1 and turn again. Remember, this is the part where we skip a bracket and start a new leaf in the next one. Here's our first few leaves. It's starting to take shape. We're going to keep going until we have 8 leaves, and then we'll be ready for our next color. Now that we have all 8 leaves finished, I'm just going to slip stitch this together. And to finish this row, we'll just chain and pull that string through and cut it off. We're just going to attach this new color to the work with a slip knot. We're going to attach it in the middle of one of these leaves from the last row. So we'll just do a slip stitch and then pull that tail nice and tight. Now we'll just chain 2 to get started. We're going to build this foundation row just like the first one. We're going to do 2 double crochets to build each little bracket, and that chain 2 counted as our first stitch. So the next little bracket is going to get built in this one that we didn't use for a leaf in the previous row. So we're going to work right into that space in between those 2 double crochets. And we're just going to make 2 double crochets in that same space, just like we did in the first row. So for this row, we're just going to keep building those little brackets into the center of the leaf and underneath in between them. To finish this row, we're just going to slip stitch together. We're just going to go right into the top of that chain 2 that we started with. Now we're just going to chain 1 and start the next row. We want the petals and leaves to be staggered, so we're going to start working into this bracket in between these 2 leaves right here. Now we're just going to follow the same pattern that we did in the last row of scales, and we're just going to do 5 double crochet and chain 1 and turn. There's our 5 double crochet, so we'll chain 1 and turn and finish this petal. Now, just like the last row of scales, we're going to skip a bracket. Remember, we want them to be staggered. So every petal is going to land on the bracket in between the 2 leaves from the row before. And we're just going to repeat the same pattern, double crochet 5, chain 1, and turn. We're going to end this row just like the last one. Slip stitch together, chain 1, and you can snip that yarn off. Now we're going to work on this center piece here. We're going to start this piece independently, and then we are going to single crochet them together. So we'll start with our third color, and we're going to do a magic circle or magic ring. This is my version of the magic circle. We're going to start with a bit of a tail and a slip knot. Then we're going to use that tail to make the circle. Then you're going to slip stitch onto that ring, and this is going to hold your magic ring together while you get started. You're going to pull the ring and that first stitch nice and tight, and then you can get started with your first round. You can start this piece however it is easiest for you. I realize some people may do the magic ring totally different, and some people may not want to start that way at all. You could just as easily chain 4 and slip stitch a small circle together. However you start this piece, you want to end up with 8 single crochets in your first round. Once you have 8 single crochets, you can start the second round. You do not need to slip stitch this round together, you can just start in a spiral. We are going to work in the back loop and put 2 single crochets in each stitch. I'm going to work my tail in, but you can weave it in at the end if that works better for you. We are going to keep working 2 single crochets in each stitch until we have a total of 16. That makes it easy to find your place if you lose count. Just make sure your second round ends with a total of 16 stitches. Another little trick to keeping track of your rounds, I only work that tail end in this second round. Then you'll have the tail end as a marker. It'll be hanging out where your round ended. I think the wrong side of the work looks a little bit more like the texture of the sunflower seeds that I'm going for here. So I'm going to pull the tail towards the right side of my work. For your third round, you're only going to increase every other stitch. So start with 1 single crochet and then 2 single crochet in the next stitch. Repeat that pattern for the third round. You should end up with 24 stitches at the end. For the fourth and last round, you're going to increase every third stitch. So you'll make 1 single crochet in each of the first 2 stitches, and then 2 single crochets in the third stitch. Repeat that pattern for this last round, and you should finish the round with a total of 32 stitches. Once you're finished with this round, we're just going to move straight into attaching it to the original piece. We are going to single crochet these 2 pieces together, and we're going to end up putting 1 stitch in between each double crochet from the foundation row of the petals. That might sound a little confusing, but I'll show you what I mean. We're going to start by working into both loops on our center piece. Then we'll just slide our hook into the center of one of those petals. Then we're just going to single crochet the 2 pieces together. For the next stitch, we're just going to work into both loops again. Then we want to put our hook underneath the foundation chains only. We don't want to put our crochet hook into the double crochets that actually make up the petal. So you can see where I stuck my hook is in between those 2. And you'll just do another single crochet. Then we're going to work into the next stitch, both loops. And this time you're going to put your hook in between petals. You're going to go right in between those 2 double crochets underneath. Then another single crochet. Work into both loops. And again, we're working just underneath the foundation chains. You don't want to work into the double crochets that make up the actual petal. Repeat these steps all the way around until your two pieces are attached. Once you get both pieces attached, you can just chain one and snip that yarn off. Now all we have left is to add the border, and that will turn it into a square. I decided I liked the wrong side of the work for this section also, but as you can see, if you do it with the right side of the work, it'll look like this. Another reason that I decided to do the wrong side of the work is it's a little easier to get to all of these sections if you have the right side facing you and the wrong side as a finished part of the work. But how you add your border is entirely up to you. When we add our border, we're going to be working clusters of 4 into these little spaces right here. I'm going to clean some of these little ends up and then we will get started. We are going to start by slip stitching this color in to attach it. Pull your end nice and tight and we'll chain 2 to start. That chain 2 counts as your first stitch. Now we're going to double crochet 3 times in that same space for a total of 4. In the next space, we're going to create a cluster of 4 half double crochet. Then we're going to create a cluster of 4 more double crochet in the next space. These 3 clusters are going to make up each side of your square. Now we're going to work the corner. In the next space, you're going to work a cluster of 4 treble or triple crochet. Then to create the corner, you're going to chain 3 and create another cluster of 4 in the same space. So here we're chaining 3, and then we'll scoot this cluster over and make sure we have room for another cluster of 4. So you'll just repeat this 4 times to create the 4 sides and corners of your square. Once you finish that last corner, just slip stitch into that chain 2 that you started with. Then you can just chain 1 and pull the yarn through and snip it off, and you're done. Pretty soon I will be posting a video that shows you how to make a bag out of granny squares. You can use any granny square to make the bag. I'm also going to show you how to make this bag with a long strap or just short handles. But before we make the bag, we're going to need to make some additional pieces. So in my next video, I'm going to show you how to make these squares and triangles to fill in the gaps. Thanks so much for watching.